So just a couple of notes. One, make sure you are on mute unless you're speaking, because if not, you'll hear everybody else's feedback. It should automatically mute you when you come in, so just leave it on mute unless you're talking. I'll give a little introduction, and then Jane Daly, the assistant superintendent, and then our principals will say hello, giving you a little description about the planning that's gone into this work so far. And then at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little button that's called participants. That will allow you to raise your hand if you have a question. And what I'll do is I will call on people who have their hands raised, and then we'll take one question at a time. So that's basically how this will work. So welcome everyone, it's officially 7:30. I wish I would be able to meet you on different terms as your new superintendent, but right now this is the way we are all engaging in our world. So I want to just say thank you to everyone. Many of you have reached out or said hello, and everyone's been so welcoming. So I truly appreciated my last month and a half here, and thank everyone for really their warm welcome. So we did these individually. We did Ashaway and HopeValley together, but the idea was that we'd have multiple forums. They will sound very similar, but you're more than welcome to join anyone you want. The idea is that there's some nuances that some people want to sort of see what's a little bit different about their school. For example, morning arrival or dismissal. But most of the information should feel the same, with little revisions based on the school facility or the need of individuals at that building. So again, I know, one, there's a lot of stress and anxiety around the reopening of school. Basically, you know, we have half of our families that really want to get back to school, half of our families that are really anxious and would like the distance learning option, which we found out on Wednesday would be available. I know there's been a lot of stress around the deadline of August 7th. But that deadline was put in place because after August 7th, that gives us 3 weeks. And in order to really finalize transportation and plan for what distance learning and in-person learning are going to look like in all our phases, we need to know who wants to do what, so we can be really mindful about the sizes of the classes, the pods, and who's coming to school and who's doing distance learning. So I know this decision is not easy. I know that you'll be frustrated with sometimes because we don't have all the answers yet. But what I do know is you've all been very thoughtful and understanding that we will do our best to keep you updated and communicate. I want you to know that the virtual forums is just another way or another opportunity to have your access to us. It should not be the only way you get answers. So you can reach out to myself, Ms. Daly, Mr. Scannapieco, Mr. Gencarelli, if you have any questions, but this is just an additional opportunity. We don't want families to think that the only way you'll get your responses or answers is if you come to the virtual forum. We've also created a district FAQ, which I continue to update every single day when I answer emails. If there's a new question that arises that's not in that FAQ, email me and I'll make sure it gets on there so that the information is consistent and that you understand what the response will be. So thank you, everyone, and I'll pass it over to Ms. Daly.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining tonight. I just want to thank you for all that you did last spring in terms of supporting our students, and I know together we'll all figure it out of how to move forward this fall. So thank you for that continued support, and hopefully we're here tonight to answer some of your questions, or maybe even get some questions from you that will help push our thinking. So, Mr. Scannapieco.
Thank you, Ms. Daly and Ms. Picard, and hello, everybody. It's nice to see people again, even though it is a virtual meeting. And I do hope everybody's having a relaxing summer as best they can. But like Mrs. Picard and Ms. Daly said, we are here to try to answer some questions tonight. So hopefully we can answer questions, provide some support, and try to put everybody's mind at ease as best we can. So with that, I'm just going to sit back and listen. And Ms. Picard, I'm going to let you lead the forum here, and I'm here.
So Mr. Gencarelli was going to try to join us if possible. He does have a family emergency, and our thoughts are with him while he deals with that. But if there's any specific question for HopeValley, I'd be happy to jot it down and get back to you. specifically. So again, thank you everyone. So if you want to ask us a question, just raise your hand using, if you go to your participants section and you look at your name, it'll give you an option to raise your hand, lower your hand. So just click on that and I will call. I see Lisa R is our first question.
Hi, I have two questions. And I'm sure that you've probably answered them in your other forums, but I have a question about masks for the kids in school. Are they going to be a particular kind that is required? Or is it, you know, I know there's a bunch of different kinds out there. So what is required for in school? And if we opt for the distance learning, who is teaching that?
Okay, so the questions are, the first one was about the mask wearing. So it is in the RIDE FAQ and we're just following the face covering. There is, the interesting thing is if you go to the CDC guidelines, there's 3 different kinds of masks suggested, but in the RIDE, in the Department of Health, it's basically a face covering. So anything that covers their face, cloth or medical mask. We have the, we have 2 kinds at the school level. They're the reusable, which if we give to a student, they would be allowed to keep it and they would wash about 20, the package says about 25 times if we provide it, or the medical ones that are disposable. The only thing that we can't just have by itself would be a face shield. Some parents have asked if that's a possibility. It is if you also wear the mask. You can't wear the face shield without the mask. So there's not a specific kind other than it has to cover their nose and their mouth. And then the other question was for distance learning. So one, right now, the plan for distance learning is that your child would be assigned to one of our classroom teachers at the school that they're assigned to. However, when the governor discussed the distance learning option, that increased the numbers of students that may want to participate. So some people have asked, will there be an opportunity, like for example, like a district virtual teacher? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the numbers. So if we have 20 second graders, it's a possibility. They won't lose their seat at their elementary school because if you determine at the end of the trimester that you want them to come back, then that seat has to be available to them. The principals may need to make some shifts around classroom sizes because we don't want one classroom with 2 students and another classroom with 15. So we want to be mindful. So those lists are fluid because of the option that was added on Wednesday. But the principals and the teachers are doing a really nice job thinking through distance learning. The Department of Ed also put out a request for a proposal. They're looking into this statewide virtual academy. I don't have all the details. What I do know is it's a possibility that your child, if you decide to go into a virtual academy, that may be a year-long commitment. It may be with students from across the state. It wouldn't just be Charahoe, but we're waiting on those details. That's something new. And as we get that information, we'll add, but we won't just place you in that virtual academy. So right now, if you opt in, you're opting in to work alongside a teacher from Charahoe. The other, like I said, the other option would be if we have our numbers large enough and we could think about a virtual assignment, that may be a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Betsy Alvarez.
Hi, thank you. My question is in regards to the limited plan. I'm asking this question as an educator in the district, the high school. I do have a first grader at Ashaway this year, and that seems a little bit vague to me. So I'm just wondering, does that mean, are you going to have maybe kindergartners or first graders in? Just a little bit more details for planning purposes if we are in a limited section.
So for elementary school, whether you're full in person or partial, they come to school every day. There is no, if you saw the middle school and high school plan, that is 50%. Everyone would be distance learning on Monday. A through J would be doing in-person learning and then distance learning on Thursday, Friday, and then vice versa for the K through Z. But RIDE has provided every district with the feedback that they cannot do half of students coming in pre-K through 5. They must be prioritized for full in-person during partial and full in-person learning.
My question's actually for the limited, not the partial or full. It's looking at that next one before full distance learning. Because I do plan on having my child go to school in person if that's what's happening. So it's
So-
that limited 25%.
Right, so the that would be determined based on the governor. If she puts us into limited, it's going to be an administrative. Our request was to ensure that we think through the populations that are struggling with virtual learning and or differently abled populations, multilingual learners. So it'll transition grades. So the administrators would be thinking through that data to determine who that 25% would be. It's not it has to be this many or that many. It's depending on the students struggling the most with virtual learning.
So as a parent, and I'm only asking this because my daughter did struggle. She got her work done, but it was a lot at home. It was a lot. So we should then, if we are distance or whatever the case is, then we should be communicating daily, if not weekly, with the teachers so they know that if my child or another child is struggling.
Absolutely.
Would
You
that
always
be
want the
correct? Okay.
teachers to be aware. If
Okay.
it's full distance learning, then no one's coming in. But if it's limited, then we're allowed to bring back small groups in that 25%, not to exceed 25%, based on those most vulnerable.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Tina Costa.
Hi.
Hello.
Did I lose you?
Nope, go ahead.
Hi. Okay. Hi. My question is, I'm having trouble making a decision if I should send my daughters back to school without knowing the plan. So do we absolutely have to register for the distance learning before ever the governor makes the decision? I mean,
So the idea of getting that plan is once August 7th comes, that we're 3 weeks away from the opening of school. So I have lots of families too that want to know if they're getting a bus without knowing. Right now, it looks like we will be most likely able to bus the majority of our elementary students based on the current bus guidance, which is one child per seat with the mask on. So it's one child and staggered. One child by the window, one child in the aisle. Next seat, one child by the window. So one per seat. We're working with the bus company right now, but middle school and high school parents are very, they want to know if they'll be able to get transportation. We're struggling with trying to get all students on buses in middle school and high school. So once we know if people are distance learning, it frees up that transportation. So it's very difficult for us to plan, one, for the number of students in classes, or to know how to plan for distance learning versus in-person learning, unless we have that information. And like I said, that after August 7th, that only gives us 3 weeks to the start of school. So I understand that it's the governor's decision, but if you don't opt in for distance learning, then we will plan as if you're planning to do whatever the governor says on August 17th.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mary Tabor?
Hi. So I was just wondering, I have a son who's on the spectrum, and he just wondering what it's going to be for wearing masks all day, because he really struggles with that. I know like the classroom that he's in is a small classroom. There's not a lot of kids. I know when he goes outside of the classroom, obviously he'll have to wear one, but being in the classroom is what I'm curious on.
So the governor's new guidance in the Department of Health is that masks will be required. With that being said, we are planning for areas where that students can take mask breaks. We are also understanding the fact that we need to get our children used to mask wearing, and that it's building their stamina. My own little one, the first few times touching, trying to figure out how to mitigate and use the mask. So the idea is that as you're home, small intervals, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and build up their stamina, with the idea that the teachers are really being very thoughtful about outside classroom time, areas in the room where they can separate. So if they can keep further distance and the child needs a mask break, they're really thinking about how to make sure that can happen. But the majority of the day, you're right, it's going to be something to get used to, and that we will have to think through with them so they get used to it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Heather Alge.
Hi, my question is also linked to the mask wearing. We've been doing this for 4 months, and even yesterday we went to go walk into Stop and Shop, and my daughter Meriden forgot her mask in the car. And we've been to Stop and Shop what seems like, many, many times since all this happened. It wasn't anything intentional, but she's so in the moment that, she could be wearing her mask for hours and then 2 seconds later completely forget about it. My question is there going to be like almost like disciplinary, warnings, or like how is that going to come into effect? I know for the younger kids, there's going to be thoughts that for the most part they're just honestly forgetting, but then there may be kids that they just don't want to wear it and it's not for any sort of health reason. So I'm just trying to figure out how the school is going to kind of decipher that. Is there going to be reminders? Is the kids who do honestly forget, is there going to be just friendly reminders and not calling kids out in the middle of the hallway because they don't have their mask on? It just seems like there's going to be a lot for the kids to get adjusted to, and to kind of deal with that too may cause some anxiety for them.
No, completely understand. The idea is not that there's disciplinary action, is that we continue to inform our children and our families the importance of the mask wearing, that we remind them, oh, Gina, don't forget, over your nose, over your mouth. It's no different than we would practice routines and rituals in the classroom for all kinds of requirements that we have. We would expect that our teachers and our administrators are building in that routine of, how do I remember, when do I pull it down, when can I, like when I'm eating, snack time, things like that. But you're not going to get in trouble. If there's a student who continues to refuse to put their mask on, we would absolutely have a family meeting. We would think about like a safety contract when we ensure that the child and the family understand the importance of the mask. But definitely working together in any situation, just like we would normally for any reason if a child was having difficulty following the rules. Let's see, Jennifer Sylvia.
Hi. We're probably opting in for the virtual, but I know that you said that they're going to definitely be assigned to a classroom teacher. Are they going to ever have like in-person meetings with the teacher like they did in the spring, or is it just packets of work coming home? Please sit down, Jake.
So when you say in-person meetings, you mean like the virtually online?
In-person, like a Zoom meeting, like one-on-ones. They were having one-on-ones with the classroom teacher, and then they were also having one-on-ones with like one of the paras in the class.
So currently, the elementary administrators, along with the secondary administrators, have been thinking through options. They're going to be meeting with their school improvement teams. The idea is that the distance learning option would be, you would be assigned to your teacher. They would provide live direct instruction throughout the day. So you would have a schedule when they would be available to do that live instruction. Oftentimes, I believe, and Ms. Daly and Mrs. Skinner-Piego have been, every morning, everyone starts together with the morning meeting. So those virtual and in-person will be together. And then throughout the day, just like they would do group work, they would be assigning their virtual groups different times as their in-person groups. The hardest part, which I know, is that it's that interaction. The students won't necessarily be interacting with each other, in the classroom, but they're still thinking through all the specifics because it depends on the age and the kinds of learning. But you should expect learning all your documents, all your work will be in Google Classroom, K through 8, and on Canvas in 9 through 12. Anything else, Jane or Jeff, that you wanted to add?
No, that was pretty much it. I just wanted to know, like, what was the virtual kind of going to look like, and like if it was just assigned to an in-class, like a teacher that's in the district, but they also have a class, because I thought I had heard that there wasn't going to be a way to see, or that the classes weren't going to be on Zoom or something. So
we use Google Meet in Charahoe, but
right.
Yep, the idea would be that right now they would be assigned with the registration. We're looking in, some people have asked if there's an option. So if there's 22 students grade 2, maybe we can assign a virtual teacher. It will depend on how many people register and if we have the numbers. Like if there's just 2 in grade 2, then that wouldn't be able to happen.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate your answer.
You're welcome, thank you. Bex and Kids?
Hi there. Can you hear me okay? Thank you very much. So quick question. She kind of answered, or you just kind of answered it relating to the remote version or the remote distance learning. So just to clarify, you mentioned that the students would still be interacting with the teacher throughout the day at various times. So I guess in March, it was more like, here's 20 things to do by the end of the day. So now it sounds like there's going to be more of an effort put into regular meetings and teaching lessons and more interaction like that. So that was my question.
Yes, there were lots of feedback and lessons learned. It was brand new, but I think based on the feedback from families, they wanted more touch points with our teachers. They wanted to ensure that it was not just a list of assignments. And actually, many families were really great about sort of identifying the teachers who really did a great job, so we could tap into those resources to see what happened and what went well, so we could sort of build upon that.
That's fantastic.
Anything? Jillian?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Jillian, oh, you're on mute. Hold on. Oh, there you are.
Got it. Hi, it's Gillian, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I've gotten it my entire life. So I had two kind of, one's an easy question, one might not be. The first trimester ends in November. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like the end of November.
Okay, just, and then my second question, so I have a daughter in Ashaway, but my son goes to pre-K. He's in the integrated pre-K at HopeValley. And so he gets some special ed services. And I didn't know if I decided to keep him home, if there was a way to just opt in for his therapies. Like, could I bring him there for that? I didn't know if that was an option, if it was a choice. He has done them online. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't. So I didn't know if that would be a choice for.
Well, and I think that would be with the IEP team. You would meet with the team to discuss what went well and what didn't, so that you could review the needs with the IEP.
Okay, but that might be a choice for us.
It could be, yes.
Just bring him in for like speech.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, Cassie's iPhone.
Hi, Gina. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I just had a question for my son who is starting kindergarten at Ashaway. He is hard of hearing, so I'm concerned about wearing the mask. Not that he relies on lip reading, but he definitely falls back on it. So should I count on a virtual option?
You shouldn't have to. If you want an in-person option, that shouldn't have to be a reason why. So are you worried about the teacher not having access, him seeing the faces?
Right.
So in a case like that, you just let Mr. Scanapieko know, because then we could order specific PPE for that teacher to ensure that there's that clearability. So when they're speaking, and if possible, if there's a device necessary, audio equipment like that, we could utilize.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a system, a hat system, but I'm just also concerned about the muffling because of the mask. So my other question, which you kind of answered briefly before, is that if he were to stay home, if I were to opt that way, could he still receive his speech therapy services via Google Meet or
yes,
another way, like a one-on-one?
Yep. Anybody that has services
sending me, yep.
Absolutely. Anyone with already services within their IEP would already be an accommodation that we would make sure you would have.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Good win. Oh, you might be on mute. Goodwin. Goodwin. Okay, we'll come back to Goodwin. We'll do Brooke Sjogren.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a daughter that's going into 4th grade at Ashaway. She's pretty used to this virtual option. We are hoping to send them both to school, but my son is going into kindergarten. And I guess my question is that I know this is the new normal now, but this is not the normal way to start public school. So are there still going to be ways that, I know that you'll probably do training with the kids and, you know, let them know about the mask wearing, but are they still going to be able to like socialize with other children? You know, I remember in kindergarten sharing and playing in block sections. How is that going to look for these kids that are just entering school?
So yes, the way school looks is very different, and I think every teacher, educator across the nation is trying to think about how we can ensure that we have that socializing by maintaining social distancing and really make sure we build those relationships, knowing that our students will be, and our classrooms will look different. So I think you're right, it's gonna look completely different. And I don't think we have it all figured out, to be completely honest. I think what a kindergarten classroom is going to look like may be very different from what a fourth grade classroom is going to look like. We're going to really rely on our school improvement teams and our teachers to tell us what they're thinking. And as much as we think we'll know the first few days, we may change it the next few days. And I think that's where we want sort of your understanding and flexibility and your feedback. What's going well? What did they really like? What are they not enjoying as much? I mean, there are certain things we can't control. With the masks, we're gonna have to help them the best way we can, but we can't say no to not wearing a mask. So, but it will look different. We don't want classrooms to be lecture. That's not the goal. And whether it's COVID or not COVID, that's not facilitation of learning. We're really gonna be, what COVID did do in distance learning was it had all of us as educators really think thoughtfully about what we're putting in front of our children, why it's there, what am I hoping they get from this? Is it really important? And by the end of the week, what do I hope they accomplish and learn? And I think teachers are really, really, really being mindful and thoughtful. They're probably as nervous as all of you are, because this is new for all of us. We are rethinking and redesigning our, just like many other industries, but this is a time where our flexibility and our innovation, it may change, and your feedback will be important as we sort of maneuver through this new journey.
Yeah, Gina, if I could too, and to Brooke's point, we are going to try to keep it as normal as we can, given the constraints that we're working with. We're fortunate at Ashaway to have a lot of nice outdoor space. We can spread the children out, so we're going to try to get them outside when we can. Historically, we've had a lot of movement breaks where kids are moving around the building, they're getting up and going. I've been in constant talk with my PE teacher, and her plan is to have the kids outside as much as possible. We're talking about materials and how we're going to assign students certain materials, and it may look different for kindergarten, where kids, instead of bouncing around from center to center, they may have an assigned center for the week that they use their own set of materials, and then at the end of the week, everything's sanitized and clean. So it is our intent to try to keep it to as close to normal as we can, knowing that, we obviously can't function the way we have in the past. And I'm optimistic too that hopefully this is just a short term and the kids will be back to a normalized school day before we know it. So it's my hope that this is short term, and as the science improves and things improve, we get our kiddos back to where they were.
Thank you very much.
Erica DeVoe.
Hi. So we have made the decision to keep our kids home for the first quarter, and Tessa will be a first grader at Ashaway. And in the spring, Gina Lee did an awesome job of giving little opportunities for kids to stay on after the official meets to just play together and have just unstructured kind of virtual playtime. And I just was wondering if that was going to be an option. And I think Gina did that, just kind of on her own organically. So I just didn't know if there's going to be something for the kids who are staying home to kind of have those virtual play moments, since they won't, have them in person at school.
Yeah, I can take that, Gina. So I know a lot of our teachers did schedule kind of open Google Meets. Our upper grade teachers had allowed children to go on and meet during lunchtime, during lunch and recess, where they can talk. So obviously we're going to try to build in, where we can, so that students who are not attending in the physical building can still have some sort of contact with their peers. How that looks exactly, I can't tell you, but you know, every teacher's goal is to support the social emotional as well as the academics. So that's a big piece that we're aware of, and we're going to be working our way through it and figuring it out the best we can.
Thank you, Jeff. Patrick Deary.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. So our son is going to be entering into kindergarten this year. So this is our first experience with school. And I know kids typically tend to get a lot of illness when they first enter the school. And maybe that'll be better this year with everyone wearing face masks. But, you know, hand hygiene is still an issue for young kids. And I anticipate they'll probably get many different possible colds, et cetera, and the sniffles, kinds of things that maybe he still would have gone to school with. It might not have kept him out of school, but this year I'm anticipating with any sort of symptoms, even mild, you're probably not going to want them to be in the school system, which seems like it's going to lead to a lot of sick days. And how is that going to be handled? So would they automatically do distance learning for the day? Or is there some kind of addendum to how many absences they can have in a year, et cetera?
So the attendance policy is shifting because there will be a difference between sick and I can't attend school at all, whether distance or in person, and sick, I'm opting for distance learning today because of just what you said. You know, I have a headache, I have a cough. Typically, I would push through and I would head off to school. But right now, for staff and for students, we're saying that can't happen. You know, you need to stay home. If someone believes that they have symptoms on the attestation form that would lead to COVID-like symptoms, then we're asking that they talk to their medical doctor, and seek advice on whether or not they should be tested based on the symptoms that they have. And then with the playbook, we should get more information soon. But what they did tell us was the Department of Health has put out the child care playbook, and that would give us a good indication of what the school reopening playbook would look like. But basically what you would do, and you would call into school and you would say, Gina's out sick, she's not going to be able to do anything today. Or Gina's sick and she's going to be doing distance learning, so the teacher is aware that she'll be virtual. So that'll be, and we're going to actually have a code, and the Department of Ed is working with us now so they can code that differently so that we can be reporting on how many distance learning days are taken. But it won't, if it's a distance learning day, it'll still count as attendance.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Gina Ray.
Hello. I apologize if I missed this. I did join 10 minutes late. I filled out a survey a while back and indicated my preference for attendance for school. I wasn't sure if there was another updated survey that went out because I do hear some of the other parents talking about opting in or opting out.
Yes, so we were going to, we did not send a second survey because when the governor announced that it was an actual option that we could do and she expected us to do, that survey then turned into a registration form. So on Friday, an email went out to all families. I also sent a voice message to let you know that that form is available. The link is on our district FAQ. It's also on our website in our August e-update. And it was also in the email that was sent out to families on Friday afternoon. So if for some reason you can't find it, just email us and we can get you that link if that's something you're interested in. And then basically it says by opting into the distance learning option, you would do that for the entire trimester for elementary school and the entire quarter for middle and high school. And it would opt you out of transportation, obviously.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The deadline for that registration is August 7th, so this Friday.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Colleen Lucas.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So I have a daughter, Haley, who's going into kindergarten this year, and my son, Jacob, is supposed to be going to the preschool at HopeValley. And I had a question around the face mask that you mentioned earlier, the ones that kind of have that see-through section in the middle so that you're able to actually see the teacher's mouth. Is there going to be a preference given for the younger teachers, such as the kindergarten and the preschool, where the kids are learning to sound out their words and, you know, see how my mouth makes the shape when I make the B sound and the M sound and everything like that? Is that something that's going to be taken into consideration for those younger grades?
So not necessarily with the mask, but we are looking into these partitions where the teachers would be able to put them in front of them when they're speaking with the students without the mask. We're meeting with the fire marshal because obviously that has to be a part of our fire grade and make sure that they're appropriate for the classroom, using plexiglass and or a partition. Not necessarily mask wearing, but that doesn't say that. There's lots of teachers out there. Everyone sort of, I'm sure like all of you, trying to figure out which mask works best for them. And, you know, I think we've probably tried on a bunch to see which ones that we can last, build stamina with. So really we're not going to force a teacher to use a specific one. We would prefer that they find one that's comfortable and makes more sense with them. But I know a lot of our teachers who are with younger students are thinking about those partitions as a way to be able to have you see their mouth and do things like that. Others, I may have purchased the one we mentioned specifically that has sort of that window. I think we were talking about for the speech pathologist, specifically someone who always deals with speaking and speech.
Mm-hmm.
But we would be willing to work with our teachers to see what would be helpful. But I think a lot of them are thinking through which mask makes the most sense for them based on the grade level. It's not a requirement. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And then I just had a second question with regards to the busing. Do we have a specific date planned of when we will know whether or not we'll have buses available? I know we have to sign up by a certain date for the virtual, and then Gina Raimondo is going to make her announcement. Do we have a planned date of when we'll know if the buses are available, just so that parents can kind of plan their work schedules around that?
So our goal is that by understanding the registration by Friday would give us a better indication of the numbers. And we are closer with our elementary schools even before registration. So we do think that we'll be able to give transportation to any elementary school student that's requiring transportation. It gets trickier because of the numbers at the middle and high school. So depending on the registrations, if we aren't able to get everybody transportation, we're asking parents who are able to drive to opt out of busing to give us an indication if that's possible. So we should know, hopefully, maybe a week after the 7th, within that week, what we're able to do. I do know that the Department of Ed has also put out information today that they're working with the National Guard, RIPTA, and a few other industries to help us think through busing, because the original busing guidance was based on public transportation. And if we consider the bus apart, so for example, if Gina and Jeff are in the same classroom, they're already going to be in the same pod, so we can put them in the same seat with the mask. That's something that the Department of Health is reviewing to determine if that's allowable. So our understanding is that they're reviewing the student transportation, and we should be getting an update shortly.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Erica and Rob Henninger.
How you doing tonight?
Hello.
Quick question. Just was wondering how lunch and recess will look this year. Are the kids going to be in the classroom? Are they going to be able to go outside still? How's that going to work?
That's a question for me. So right now at Ashaway, we're planning on having the students eat in their classrooms, but they will have recess outside. And I typically have 4 classrooms per recess period going out. So what we're going to do is have a rotating schedule, and we're going to limit classes to certain sections of the campus. So if you're familiar with Ashaway, let's say for a 3rd and 4th grade recess, I'm going to have 4th grade in the back of the school, and the field will be divided into 2 halves, one for each class. And then in the front of the school, we'll have the playground and the blacktop area. And all the kids will get to rotate through all 4 quadrants at some point. So they're going to get out, but they're going to be staying with their pod during that time.
And we are asking teachers and our principals to think all the opportunities for outside classrooms when they can, to be able to get fresh air and while keeping social distance to allow for that additional fresh air.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Lisa R.
Hi again. I had a follow-up question, I think, from Erica. If they are going to do things, like if they do virtual learning, I know she was talking about like virtual play moments after, and you mentioned sick days. The kids would go to distance learning if they could, if they have a sniffle or whatever. But if they're being taught by somebody in the district instead of their classroom teacher, like how does that work? They're not in like their normal regular classroom, and if they integrate back in, then they're going to be with.
So that would look different. So I'll give you, if we can do a virtual learning, that would be something separate. So if your child's full in-person learning and they're sick, they'll always be with that same teacher. There won't be a different teacher.
So that teacher is doing distance learning and teaching their class.
Yep.
But if we opt for distance learning for the first semester, we're not getting our teacher. We're getting a teacher from Charahoe.
Well, right now, everybody would get, right now, as it stands, everybody's going to be assigned. So if you were getting Mrs. Picard, you'd still be getting Mrs. Picard. We don't know what the numbers are. So if only 2 students in grade 3 want distance learning, and I'm the teacher, that means I have 2 distance learning students and maybe 20 non-distance learning students. So I would be thinking through my day in my groupings about when I would be meeting with those children. I'd have everything in my Google Meet, but they would be seeing me. And if I had students that got sick, they'd still be seeing me.
Right.
What we're talking about is some of the teachers and parents ask, well, what if we have more than, what if there's a whole classroom full of grade 2 students? Is that a possibility? Maybe. I can't say yes for sure. It would be having that conversation with the teachers union, how would we do a virtual assignment? Can we then merge all the kids in grade 2 across the district together? So that's something we're talking about. It's nothing is definite. The only definite right now is that you will be assigned, as you always have been, to a teacher. That's the plan. If something else happens and we find out that we have 25 grade 2 students that want distance learning and we have an opportunity to do a virtual assignment, then we would let people know. But right now we won't know until we know the numbers.
Okay, so it is pretty vitally important that people sign up for this by Friday, correct?
It is. It makes that. I understand the stress. It would help us determine how we can plan.
Right, I know it was hard to sign up for something or consider it without knowing the plan, but I know a lot of people are hoping to wait it out, but that is helpful.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michaela?
Hi, I have a kindergartner starting this year and possible pre-K. I was interested to know what pre-K will look like.
What?
If they're running pre-K.
So we are running pre-K. As far as what it looks like, everything is going to look different. I think like Mr. Scanapieko said earlier, the teachers are thinking thoughtfully about what those stations or those centers will look like individually. And if we do have or sharing of anything, it has to be sanitized before somebody else uses it. But if you have a student in the integrated pre-K, we're allowing that opportunity to continue, and the teachers, we're using them as our sort of leverage and launching pad to say, what can pre-K look like? What's the need, and how do we make sure that we get the appropriate academics to them, as well as the play, the build, all those early childhood skills. The idea would be, again, same thing. It would be thinking through how many people are interested in distance learning versus in-person learning, and what's available once we know those numbers. But is there a specific concern or?
I was interested to know if it was only going to be open to the IEP children, or if the typical students were also going to be able to be in the classroom.
No, we're keeping it open.
You're keeping it open, okay. All right, and my other question,
by having their integrated peers, it actually builds on the program and builds.
Well, and my son, my kindergartner, was in the pre-K for 2 years as well, so I know it's such a wonderful program. But with my second coming in, I wanted to know if it was going to be as normal. And pre-K, like everyone else has been saying, have been the most challenging. Well, not the most challenging, but for me as a parent, thinking about it is challenging because it's so new. So I just wasn't sure how stripped down the classrooms were going to be, especially for pre-K. it being, you know, these new 3-year-olds entering the building, I think was my concern.
There's definitely a lot of conversation around what does pre-K look like, and I really is thinking about instead of doing sort of those group centers where they would all be sort of doing something together, it's what we can do individually or maybe with a partner that doesn't allow me to sort of interact in a way that has the distancing, but I can still do that group work. It's all very new, but I would say if you want to know how pre-K is going to look, the best person to ask is the pre-K teacher who's right now racking her brain to figure that out.
I know. My other question is, are they going to be offering kindergarten orientation as they normally will? So like the kids, we're opting to start the school year. So I'm interested to know like if they will be able to go into the building before school starts in an orientation as they typically would.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Good question. So in the past we have, but we've also had parents accompany with them during this time. So right now we've been discussing some sort of virtual options maybe, but I'd have to talk more with, you know, with Ms. Picard and Ms. Daly too to see how that could possibly look. But given the restrictions we have with visitors in the classrooms, it would be difficult to get the students into the school before, unless we figured out some way of distancing parents, having the kids come in with the staff and so forth. It's definitely on our list of conversations. We've been discussing it. And as soon as we do know more about who's coming and what options we have, we're going to put that forth to the parents, especially for kindergartners.
Thank you. I just have one last quick question. For these new students coming in, these pre-K and kindergarten students, if they're nervous about being in school and maybe separating from their parents, I don't believe mine will be because they're extremely social, but other kids, will the teachers have a little bit of leniency and liberties to be able to comfort and give these kids who are nervous or upset or, you know, whatever? Are they going to be able to give them that emotional context that you kind of expect and that these teachers do such a great job of?
Boy, that's a loaded question there.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So on any given year in kindergarten, the first few days of school, we have all sorts of screaming, crying, laughing, jumping. I mean, you name it, the kids are exhibiting the behaviors. Our teachers are very good about helping with the separation anxiety and helping the students settle into school. You know, unfortunately, teachers are going to be discouraged from giving them the hug or getting close to them because of the guidelines we have in place right now by the Board of Health. With that being said, it doesn't mean that we don't have other options as far as taking them out for a walk or taking them through the building or going to see the nurse, going to see the librarian. We have many people on staff who are very good about helping support students who are having trouble transitioning, including myself. I mean, I'm very active in that process as well. So until we know more and we have more information about
to be able to prepare them, especially if they're, because my son, both my children will be going to HopeValley, but my son was at the preschool for 2 years, so he understands what it's like to go to school a little bit, and he knows that he has the comfort of those teachers. So it would be, I just want to be able to prepare him a little bit if he understands that, you know, that he might not get that reaction this year.
You know, talk to your children about, you know, you can't really run up to Mrs. So-and-so and give them a hug. Right now, you know, we're trying to stay safe. And I think as long as we keep reinforcing those behaviors, students handle it much better than sometimes the parents, we as parents do. So, and like I said, if we start to see over time, like continued levels of support, then we'll intervene appropriately.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You got it.
I don't see any hands unless, but we have a few more minutes, so I'm happy to give a minute if there's somebody want. Oh, I see Goodwin.
Hi, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my phone was malfunctioning last time. Michaela kind of asked some of the questions, but again, I have a child going to preschool as well. And I was wondering if the virtual option was also available for the preschool. I haven't gotten anything on preschool, and I understand everybody's trying to plan it and there's lots of unknowns, but I was just curious.
Yeah, right now, the options that existed when we had school are still the options that we have. So it shouldn't be anything different that I'm aware of.
If I'm not comfortable sending my son to preschool, just like the K through 12 students have the option to do virtual, does preschool have that option as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then my only other question, kind of off topic, is I noticed the question and answer session like this one is for middle school on the 13th. I'm just wondering how the parents can make their decision. Like, I found this very informative, and I just wonder how parents can make their decision if they only have a middle schooler and they didn't get the answers to a lot of these questions, and having to make the decision by Friday whether or not they're choosing virtual or not.
So the idea is that the virtual forums it should not be the only way you get your answers, or you should have to wait. So this is just an additional opportunity.
Okay.
Anyone's welcome to join any of the forums and ask any questions that they have. Most districts are doing one forum for the entire community. I decided to do more because I'm new, and it gave me an opportunity to meet more families in smaller settings. But I can put out in my messaging tomorrow when I remind parents about the distance learning that while middle school is scheduled for next week, that doesn't mean that they can't hop into any other virtual forum to ask questions, or email us and ask any question that they may have.
Okay, who should they direct the email to?
I would say if it's specific to the middle school, they should email me, Mr. Zenian, and Miss Florence.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, and I appreciate all the planning that everyone's putting into this. I know it's not easy.
Thank you so much. Let's see, Jessica's iPhone.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So I have a preschooler who's going into CHIP at the high school. He already did his first year, and then obviously he did his distance learning for the second half of the year. I didn't know if you had any idea of what that would look like, because he's at the high school now. He's not at the elementary school. Like, with the high school students keep on going into the classroom? I know her classroom is a lot smaller than HopeValley's preschool program, and I just didn't know if you had any sort of insight as to what that might look like.
I can answer that a little bit. I know that there's been some discussion at the high school level. I've talked with Mr. McKenzie, and there is a glass partition where the students can observe. So I think that there would be more of that going on than the students going in the classroom, just to limit the number of students. So I believe they'd still be able to do their what they need to learn by doing the observations through the glass.
Okay, because I know they did a lot of outdoor activities with that particular pre-K program.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if all that stuff was still going to happen, because I know her room is a little bit, obviously it's a little bit smaller because it's just small.
Yeah, but she's got that playground dedicated just to the preschool students outside of.
So they'll still be able to use. Yeah, so they'll still be able to use all that.
Just like we can at any other school, we'll have to do frequent cleaning and it could be in that situation outdoors, or maybe the high schools. I don't know if like the high school students could then go out and support, but I know when we were talking about like in the classroom, they would use more of that glass space to observe. But outdoors, we know it's a little bit different.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Tammy and Troy.
Yeah. Hi. I don't know if it was covered or not yet. Maybe I missed it. I was just curious as to what the plan would look like if, in fact, somebody does test positive, whether it be a teacher or a student. I mean, we're having a hard enough time getting tested across the state. I mean, what's that look like for inside the school?
So one of the metrics for the governor is that the test turnaround time would have to be between 24 and I believe 48 hours. So she wouldn't even begin
Right.
to open up school unless that could happen.
Mhm.
So we won't see school open if that can't happen, one. Two, if there's a positive case, right now we're waiting on additional guidance, but in the child care playbook, they have some draft guidance that they've been using. And my understanding is that guidance will be similar unless there's lessons learned from the Department of Health. And right now I believe there's been like 10,000 students in childcare and only one daycare had any outbreaks. So that's going pretty well. But
Right.
as far as notification, we will, once if a child or a staff member is diagnosed with COVID, then we would be working with the Department of Health side by side to determine what that looks like and who
Mhm.
and when school ends, or is it a quarantine, or which classrooms. But that's not a decision that we'll do alone. They have guaranteed that we will have a Department of Health liaison to support the schools and district to do those decision makings. Now, because of HIPAA, we won't be able to tell families, Gina has COVID. We would be saying that your child has come into contact with someone who's tested positive, and the Department of Health will guide us in those directions.
Okay, so as of right now, though, we don't know if it's the entire class, or the building, or
Right now they say, I know what they've said in that child care playbook in the areas that they've opened. Technically, they look to see how long you've been around people, anyone they've made contact longer than 15 minutes, if they didn't keep 6 feet. So they ask lots of those questions, and then they determine based on that information. We are tracking pods. So the pods are being tracked by our student information system, so we'll know what bus pod they're on, what classroom pod they're on, things like that. So then we have to be able to give that to the Department of Health.
but we have the contact tracing in place, so that's a huge thing right there.
Yes,
Okay.
and
Thank
even
you.
in the school, the logs coming into school, there's specific where we restricting many visitors, but anyone that has to come in, there's a new log that they have to complete. We have to get phone numbers. Those of you that have gone out to maybe a restaurant or something, they've taken your name, your phone number. There's additional
Right.
information that we'll have to have.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Erica DeVoe.
Hi, last question. If, so we're staying home, can I assume that we'll have access to the same like art, music, PE, access to those teachers similar to how they did it in spring as well?
If you're distance learning, you'd be allowed the same opportunities, yes.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Amy Laska. Oh.
Hi, thank you.
There you are.
I have a couple of questions, well, two. If we choose full in-person learning and for any reason we're in there and we decide, you know what, I really want to do virtual, can we opt for virtual at any given point?
So what we're saying is that if you're changing your mind once you get to school, that you set up a meeting with the administrator to discuss the concern. One, we want to make sure we understand what the concerns are and the questions so that we could maybe solve and come to a solution. And if not, then the administrator would work with the family to determine if that makes the most sense.
Okay, and the other question would be, will the before school program still be available?
Are you talking about Ashaway specifically?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I can answer that. So right now my plan is to not start that only because we're working with stable pods, and that typically does not have a stable group coming in every day. Okay. So I would want to see how the first week or two of school goes to see how we're able to work with our pods and see how students are moving around. And after that, put out information to parents who may need the before school program. And if we have a list and we think we can create a stable group, then we may decide to run it. But as of now, we're not going to be able to start it for the start of the year.
Thank you. I was just wondering, I thought it would affect busing as well.
Yeah, I think every school is looking at the opportunity to see if they should open or hold, depending on the numbers and getting the students just used to the new way of schools happening. Matt?
Hi, I just had a quick question, and maybe it was already answered, so I apologize for the repetition. If a student selects to go to school, will they have an opportunity to opt out before the end of the trimester, or are they held to that same standard as the virtual learning?
So it is very similar that those that are planning to come full in person, we're asking that everyone sort of stick with that plan. However, we realize that on a case-by-case basis, there could be things that happen, so that you schedule an appointment with the administrator to talk through that so that they can work with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Chelsea.
Hello. I had a couple of questions. One is if a parent, because they work in many different towns and cities over Rhode Island or other states, if a parent happens to test positive, does the child need to stay home and do virtual learning, or are they in the classroom as usual?
So the interesting thing about that is in our guidance from RIDE, it says more information to follow in the playbook. They haven't given us the complete guidance yet. And I'm not sure why, because I think sometimes your natural reaction is to say yes. But that is the one case when it says a family member test positive, that they say that they're going to get us the information. So I don't have a clear answer for you yet on that.
Okay. And then are they to wear masks when they are out at recess as well, or are they allowed to play with each other outdoors mask free?
So they are allowed to play with each other at a distance. The recess is not going to look the same. They can take masks off in the outdoor spaces with the distance apart. We're considering outside classrooms as one of the ways to do a mask break. But again, it won't look, the same. It will be at a certain distance. Everyone will have a spot in the playground to be able to do that. And then the playtime is if they're closer together, then the mask has to come back on. But if they stay in their area, and I think of it like if you think about like spots, the assigned spots or the assigned seats in a classroom, that you'd have your assigned area in the playground, and we have to be very careful and mindful of what that looks like. So the kinds of recess games, they won't be able just to interact or play tag or things like that.
Okay. Would they be able to do that if they had masks on outside?
So the physical, there is new guidance around PE and physical contact. It's just a matter of ensuring that the teachers and the PE teachers, everyone's clear about the kinds of guidance that's necessary. We have an athletic plan that we've been using for high school that I think will help us sort of think through that. But recess is one of those areas that we're still sort of thinking through to ensure that, one, they get time to play, and two, they get the mask break, and three, that they do it in a way that helps build their relationships with one another without being concerned around safety and making sure that we follow all protocols that are necessary. So we're still working on that.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Ray.
Yes, hi. I have two quick questions. One is around on Friday the 7th, when all of our options are due by, how quickly would be the turnaround time where we'd be communicated whether our option was honored, and the logistics of, whether we're sending our child or doing distance learning?
So if you registered for distance learning, we're going to honor that registration. So what we're saying is, by doing that, you're saying you're opting in. Oh, is that me? You're doing it, and you're opting in for the full trimester. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. 1 second. Try that now. And we wouldn't, you're not going to sort of, if you registered, know that that's going to be the option that we're planning for you. If you did not register, we're planning for you to do whatever the governor determines is the phase as of August 31st. So that's how the plan's going to work. And what was the second question? Sorry, I don't know what's mine.
So the second question that I have is, are you able to hear me or no?
No, go ahead. I can hear you now.
Okay. So the second question is in regard to the bus situation. If we're able to support driving our children to school, But my daughter goes to the after school program at the Hopkinton Rec, and typically she'll take a bus from the school to Hopkinton Rec. If they're up and running there, do you have any information around how that bus system would work or how I should register for that?
Not with the rec program, unless Jane, you know. I'm not familiar with how the rec is.
Well, I know if Hopkinton Rec is open, the students would typically take one bus from Ashaway in the afternoon that drops off all the kids to the rec program. With that being said, it's usually a pretty good number of students. So I have a call out to Hopkinton Rec to see how they're gonna, one, handle the after school program, and two, if we do have a lot of students going, we may have to explore options for the bus due to the number of kids who would typically go to the rec program.
Okay, and that registration obviously is done at the rec program, so they would communicate with you all.
Yes,
How many?
Hopkinton Rec usually gives a list to me of the kids who are going to be coming to the rec program in the after school, and we put those students all on one bus.
Okay.
Okay, so we have
Okay,
our last
thanks.
question of the night, Jennifer or Sylvia.
All right, sorry. It's not so much of a question, but just an idea. Although I'm not doing in-person learning, recess is really, I have a lot of passion towards that. I'm a physical therapist. So I have been kind of creating a board for Mr. G, and him and I have a meeting, I think later in the month, because it's emergency. But you know, tag could probably still be done if parents send in pool noodles, and each child has their own pool noodle. You know, they can tag each other with a pool noodle.
Oh, I mean, I agree. There's different ways to be thinking about how, like even shadow tag, right? I'm talking about your typical, like, put my hands to touch you.
Right. I just want to
agree,
make sure
absolutely.
that, like, you know, these kids are really, like, recess really should be a way for them to really be getting energy out. So when you're talking about like specific spots on the field, or like, I just want to make sure they're not going to be sedentary in these spots and it's just outside and sort of like they do need to be like blowing off steam.
No, and they can also use balls. They would be in a group. Then the teacher would have to sanitize the balls. It's just a matter of training them to know that this is going to look different.
So are you saying like they can use balls and like do dodgeball, or like they each have to have their own ball? Because
dodgeball is not something I've ever been allowed to play in my old district, so I don't know if that's allowed. But I do know
maybe that's just when I was little. I don't know.
that they will be allowed to use equipment if it can be sanitized, and that we work with the students to understand how that looks, so they're not. So this is all sort of, it's new, right? It's going to get them to sort of think differently about their recess and how they utilize the equipment to ensure that they're being mindful of why we're sanitizing it, how often it has to be, so that we're careful.
Have you considered installing like the automatic hand sanitizing units, like right outside the playground or right there in case somebody's sneezing, or? Because that seems like it could be a very easy solution to have right there on hand.
Yeah, there's lots of things that the principals are working with our facilities director to think about what makes the most sense. I know maybe possible hand washing stations, because that's better, especially if they were outside, but we're still thinking through those sanitization and hand washing opportunities quickly.
So I'm sure Mr. G can share with you, Mr. Sorry, I don't know how to say Mr. S. But I can send my email if you'd like it.
No, that would be great. I think the more feedback and suggestions that we can utilize to help have our teachers think through what recess, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
I mean,
yeah. And just so you know, I was going to say, just so you know, the four elementary principals, we're very tight. We work together. We're in constant communication. We're always bouncing ideas off of one another. So, yeah, we're always open to information and ideas and so forth.
I'm sure, like, for the parents that are sending their kids, maybe some parents might be able to volunteer at recess to make things. I know that you don't want visitors, but this could be a time where maybe, you know, extra help that's dedicated for recess to help sanitize, because I'm sure, I know I'm not the only one that wants our kids to be able to play.
Yeah, I think we're all thinking through those opportunities, and not just outdoors, right? Because we know we live in New England and it gets colder, and what does it look like when we're inside, and so that we can be mindful of those movement opportunities. So I want to thank everybody this evening. I know I appreciate it. We have 2 more forums this week. One for Richmond Elementary on Thursday at 5:30, and then one for the high school in Charahoe Tech and Cala at 7:30 on Thursday. And please let any of your middle school friends know, and I'll put that out in my message tomorrow, that you don't need to wait for the forum to ask your questions. This is just supposed to be another opportunity to be able to access and provide us information, get your questions. Sometimes it's just nice to hear from someone in person. So thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening. And we appreciate all of the feedback and the questions. It continues us pushing our thinking.
Thank you so much for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.